Yeah, Tim Jacobson, 201 Main Street. Where are we at? Very good. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you.
Hold on a second. There we
This matter came up approximately 90 days ago, I guess, and was set aside for 90 days so that we could, my understanding was so that we could provide additional information and sit down and meet and see if there were any questions or issues. And I have not heard back from the city. We have not had a meeting to discuss any of the financial reports and information that we provided for a decades worth of land transactions. We remain interested in sitting down and seeing if there are any questions or if we can answer any concerns that anyone has. So I'm just simply here to say that I don't think that there's any need for the city to expend funds on a separate audit. We've provided extensive documentation of these numerous land transactions that have taken place since roughly 2002, and we would like to continue working amicably with the city to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of the speaker? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? All in favor say aye. Motion is carried. This is noticed for closed session. Before we do that though, I want to hear from one other individual on items 73, 74, 75, and also that would be part 76. 73, City of La Crosse, Wisconsin Independent Auditors Report on communications with those charged with governance and management advisory comments as of December 31st, 2010. 74, City of La Crosse, Wisconsin Federal and State Single Audit Reports as of December 31st, 2010. City of La Crosse Financial Statements with Independent Auditors Report as of December 31st, 2010. And I need a motion to go into public hearing. All in favor say aye. Opposed? We're now in public hearing. And Monica Hauser of 603 Locust Street on Alaska. Are you here?
Mr. Chair, Monica Hauser sitting to my left here. She is the auditor in charge of our annual financial audit with Hawkins Ash & Bapty. She's here. There's a summary report on each of your desks this evening. Last month at the council meeting, I did pass out all of the detailed reports regarding our 2010 financial audit, and Monica is here just to briefly go over the highlights of the 2010 financial audit, which are contained in this report, and then answer any questions that you may have. And with that, here's Monica.
Okay, I promised Wayne I'd keep it short, so I'm going to just kind of cruise through, touch on the highlights, any major changes from 2009 to 2010. First of all, on page 2, this is our auditor's report. I'll just note that this is a report, the summary report that you have in front of you is something that we do just for the board presentation. It does not contain all the required schedules and footnotes. Those are in your full financial statement packet that you would have received at the last meeting. On page 3, this is the balance sheet for the year. You'll see that total assets were $718 million compared to $644 million in 2009. Biggest change was there was a large increase in cash due to some refunding of debt at the end of the year, where you had the cash from the new debt, but you had not paid off the bonds that you were refunding yet. So cash is inflated because of that by about $33.3 million. Under liabilities, you'll see that debt is the same way. It's higher because of just that timing issue of when the debt was actually refunded. Under the equity and other credits, we'll talk about the general fund balance. At the end of 2010, the general fund balance was $22,275,934. And of this $22 million, $20.7 million of it is unreserved, undesignated. $1.2 million is reserved, It's reserved for like advances to other funds and prepaids. And $315,000 was designated for budget carryovers. And we always compare your fund balance as a percentage of the current year expenses. And this year it was 30%. I think last year was 29%, so very comparable to last year. Next, we'll skip over to page 4. You'll see the chart there shows the revenue for the year. I don't need to read through it for you. You can see, we just show what the major sources of revenue are. Comparing total revenue from 2009 to 2010, there was about a $7.1 million increase, or about 3.5%, so it was very comparable. The increase was due to an increase in federal grants. Last year we had a lot of transit center activity, and then this year we had all the proceeds from the debt, so those, from that extra refunding debt, so those kind of netted each other out. On page 5, this shows your total expenses, and the graph shows where your expenditures are going. Comparing 2010 to 2009, expenses decreased about $13.4 million, or 7.1%. And a lot of this decrease has to do with 2009, there was a lot of activity with that transit center. In 2010, there was very little activity with that. The next page, I'm not going to go through every fund, but it lists out all the funds and their equity balance at the beginning of the year, the revenues, expenditures, and then the equity at the end of the year. The graph shows your equity trend where you've been in the last 5 years. And then page 8, it's just kind of our quick overall summary. We issued a clean, unqualified opinion on the financial statements, which is the best opinion you can get. We found no errors or material problems. Long-term debt. The long-term debt balance as of December 31st, 2010 was $130 million, which is well below the state statute limit of $156 million. And again, just to note that it's inflated this year because of that timing of that refunding. TIF districts. The city has 11 TIF districts that collected $7.2 million in tax increments in 2010. We issue a report on compliance and internal control over financial reporting. We did not have any compliance violations or internal control problems. And then other reports, we issued the federal and state single audit reports. Again, no issues. Issued a clean opinion, no compliance violations. Then you'll see there we issue some other reports. The last one there is the communication with audit committee. If we have any management advisory comments, we'll go through them in that report. And the only thing we had this year was kind of a heads up for, there's a new government accounting standard that's coming out and going to be effective for 2011. It's called GASB 54. It has to do with reporting your fund balance. So the council will see some new resolutions and policies having to be passed in order to how we're going to classify some of these funds and how we're going to report fund balance. So that's coming down from the federal government. That's all I have unless anybody has questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.